Militant protests always incur a backlash, and today we are going to look at why these dramatic protests, not just the ones that are happening today, but ones historically, often isolate the very cause that they are trying to speak to. Let's go.
2 months, climate protesters have targeted priceless works of art, making for viral moments that grab attention. But is the message getting through?
On this channel, we seek to tell the truth, to be able to help fathers, men, and families adjust to our current culture wars and be able to raise their society with traditional values. And this is such an important topic because we have been persistently inundated with protest movements over the last 10 years. And we should look at, do they actually have an effect? Are they doing any good for their causes? And how can we resort back to the traditional values that got us to the place where these monstrous protests can happen in the first place and not be lashed upon by a tyrannical government, at least not yet.
In Europe, 17 police officers were injured in the UK last night as hundreds of rioters attacked police and set fire to homes in Northern Ireland in what is a second straight night of violence. Authorities have described this unrest as, quote, racist thuggery.
Before I get into anything else, please like, share, and subscribe. This channel is at nearly 1,750 followers, which I hope to get to 1776 by July 4th of this year, or maybe 1800. But I've received an exorbitant amount of support for just an ugly little guy from the Midwest trying to tell the truth about psychology, fatherhood, and manhood. Thank you so much for your support. I will try to earn it. Let's get back into it.
Visitors at the National Gallery in London stood stunned as two young activists glued themselves beneath an exhibit of Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers.
In 2024, the National Bureau for Economic Research did a review of 14 protest waves between the years 2017 and 2022. And what they found is that there is substantial internet activity when these protest waves happen, but that public opinion was only changed or modified in 1 out of 14 of those movements. And as a matter of fact, it was the BLM movement, which has received an exorbitant amount of backlash in the last couple years. And that's not because the public opinion necessarily went towards a fascist territory. It is simply because they were revealed as being the Marxists that they started out as. So, in reality, 14 protest waves within 5 years changed the public opinion on zero in terms of political affiliation or political action.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
In 2017, a research study by Feinberg and Kovachev found that extreme protest tactics like riots, blockades, and shocking images actually reduced public support for those movements. It's called the radical flank effect. They're quoted as saying extreme protest tactics reduce popular support for social movements by lowering identification with the movement and increasing perceptions that the protesters are unreasonable. You throw soup on the Mona Lisa, you seem unreasonable, and that in fact does not win people to your side according to this research.
Christine, Laura, what you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin over the course of the night. A second night since Jacob Blake was seen shot in the back 7 times by a police officer. And what you are seeing now, these images came and come in stark contrast to what we saw over the course of the daytime hours in Kenosha and into the early evening, which were largely peaceful demonstrations in the face of law enforcement.
Researchers Bashir, Lockwood, and Chastain highlight the concept of identity threat, which says that when people feel like they are attacked or blamed, they harden their position. This means when you tell moderates that they are a bigot, that they are racist, that they are sexist, that they are one of those isms, they in fact harden their position because they have a perception that you're threatening their identity. This is simply a bad tactic if you want to win people to your side. It is the difference between teaching truth and trying to make people feel guilty. You are not collaborating when you try to use guilt as the primary tactic. Now, that's probably won people a lot of financial support because they're speaking to people's instincts to want justice. But in fact, in the long course, when that justice isn't served, even though they paid you to try to accomplish it, then your movement loses steam and in fact may even have a counter movement.
Tonight, a massive group of protesters again taking to the streets of LA.
In this country, no human is illegal.
The city of Angels on edge after violent clashes over the weekend. Police in riot gear facing off with protesters who oppose immigration enforcement operations carried out by ICE agents. Tonight, President Trump saying he made a great decision to send 2,000 National Guard soldiers to the city.
Studies of climate activism by Brugger and Pigeon have shown that aggressive tactics like gluing yourself to artwork have shown as having moved people who were moderately on the side of the cause away from them, because they would say that I do agree with this activist's premise for what they're doing, but I disagree with their tactics, and so I cannot be seen with them. I will not be associated with them, and so it actually moves people away. This is how protest turns from amplifier into an amplified failure. If you do this to artwork, you tear down statues, ultimately the moderate people will move away from your cause.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Here's some of the takeaways. Bigger noise does not equal bigger impact, and if we want to change hearts and minds to our cause, having those interpersonal relationships is so much more important. I have been much more forthrightly convinced of a point or a political persuasion by the people that I'm closest to because I have social collateral with them. I wouldn't want to go against the grain in my actual relationships, whereas the internet just simply has less impact. So if you want to change hearts and minds, and that includes the hearts and minds of your children, family, community, country, county, these are people that live alongside you are the ones that would be convinced first because they see how you live, and that gives you a little bit more persuasive impact when you live with integrity and when you try to do things for the benefit. They see you working for the benefit of your community. Then even if they disagree with your stance on a particular issue, they might actually see you're moving towards the good of society, and I might join you, or at least not disagree politically and in a way where I would try to dissuade anyone from going with you. To the men and fathers out there, this is our time to rebuild our society. Many of our institutions, traditions, and our integrity have been torn down, especially the ones who are the founding of Western civilization. This is our time to rebuild. Do not shrink from the fight. We can do this together. And I want you to think to yourself and maybe add in the comments, have you ever been dissuaded? Have you ever been talked out of a political cause by seeing the most radical end of the activism on that side? I know I certainly have. And in 2020, all the way up until 2024, maybe even in 2016, when the big action started and the big protest movements began, every single cause I could check off each box, I have been dissuaded from believing in or following or pursuing because seeing the way that they behaved. Now, it's our turn. This is our time to rebuild. What do we want this society to look like? Young man, it's our turn. Let's go.